Mine is similar to the issue of playing by ear and playing by the sheet. I think trying to go into jazz music,
Hmm.
finding a little difficulty when it gets to those pieces that I have to play by the sheet, because I don't have any prior training in that area. It's always difficult to break that barrier. I don't know how I can get around that because I can just listen to some music and identify the chords that I can identify by ear, but there's a lot more that requires me to read the sheet, but not be invested in that skill. Is always the barrier. How do I get around it?
To learn jazz music without a sheet.
Yeah.
So jazz is a very complicated genre of music. And if I'm being honest, most jazz pieces you have to use the sheet because of the nature of the chords. It's complex. Sitting there and trying to score a jazz piece, it's going to take forever. So when I used to play a jazz gig, I usually learn it from like the lead sheet, the real book, stuff like that. But jazz music is a little different from like gospel, pop, and blues and stuff where they're simple enough where you can learn them by ear. Jazz tunes, not so much. Because here's the thing, jazz in itself is predominantly built around improvisation. So if a jazz tune is 4 minutes long, probably the entire song is like 45 seconds. And then the rest of the 3 minute plus is just improv. That's what jazz is built on. It's not necessarily just chords, 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 chords. It's heavily around improvisation. And that's where you can start using a lot of reharm and stuff like that. But so I wouldn't recommend you try to learn entire jazz songs by ear. It's going to take too long and it's not very efficient. If you want to learn better chord charting and learning chords by ear, it's better to start with simpler songs, gospel tunes, or CCM tunes and work up your way than try to go straight into jazz. Because nobody I know really sit and transcribe whole jazz songs. People might transcribe jazz solos, so like the runs, they'll learn those by ear, but not necessarily the chords. Because again, jazz is so fluid that the chords are constantly changing. When you see a jazz pianist play, he's reharmonizing heavily, and he's using rootless voicings if he's playing in a band, and substitutions. That stuff to transcribe by ear, it's a lot. I wouldn't start there. It's better to learn that stuff from a lead sheet where you just have the melody and the chords. But again, I like to look at it into tiers. Start with learning just simple like CCM, gospel, and blues, then jazz. If you can't do the other three comfortably, jazz is going to be a nightmare because those are all, the concept that we use in gospel really comes from jazz. And jazz has gone way further than the stuff we do in gospel nowadays. So if you're not that advanced yet, it's better to just hang around with the gospel stuff before matriculating into the hardcore jazz, because it's a whole different ball game. A ball game that I'm not even in myself. I haven't done anything jazz related in years. It's not really my favorite genre. I really studied jazz so I could learn the harmonic concepts because it's the same concept we use in gospel. But I wouldn't categorize myself as a jazz guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's clear. With the church gospel stuff, I think I play in church a lot, but I think I have another challenge with that side too that I think I would need your input on. Playing a lot in church, I am at that level where I feel everything I play is so stale in my ear. So I don't know how to sound or sound fresh because it's like everything I play now, I've heard it before, I've played it before, and then it
So that means you got to
like,
challenge yourself. So it sounds like you're not doing a lot of external learning. You're just regurgitating the things you already know. So if you're bored with your own playing, if you feel like you're regurgitating a lot of the same things, I mean, you need to learn new ideas. That gets into transcription. So guys like me, other YouTubers, guys you hear on the radio, try to see if you can transcribe exactly what they're playing. So if you see me do certain things, say, I'm going to sit and I'm going to learn that lick. make it a part of your own, add it to your own vocabulary. That's how I learn too. I'm constantly copying from guys also. The thing is, I'm at the level now where I not only copy, but I copy and tweak. So I take something from somebody and I kind of tweak it and make it my own. But even just the copying process is enough to start changing the way you play, right? So that's what we call transcribing. And you don't need to do whole songs. You just take sections and bits and pieces of little runs and licks and movements that you like, and you transcribe it and make it your own. And that will start, that's what we call having a bag of tricks, right? You start to grow that bag of tricks. So when you're playing, you no longer have to play the same things in the same way, because you're learning little new melodic, rhythmic, and chord ideas that you can add to your song. So you see, when we start to get to a certain level, we have to change the type of things that we work on and focus on. So I always tell folks in the beginner, intermediate level, your goal is to just get comfortable with chords. Learn your chords, learn them in all 12 key, get efficient playing them in version. You're just learning that. Once you can do all of that and do that comfortably, now you need to start working on what we call vocabulary, right? Licks, lines, and runs. And a lot of that stuff you're going to need to learn externally. You're going to have to get inspiration and ideas from other players. And that's where the transcription that I'm talking about comes in. But if you're not at that level, you don't need to focus on that stuff yet. Because all of that external runs, licks, lines, passing chord, it's going to be built on the concept of knowing your chords like the back of your hand. So that's why I stress the beginners and intermediate. That's got to be your focus. We call that the fundamental work. You got to play in all 12 keys, and you need to be able to play your chords comfortably. So if I say, play me G7 sharp 9 or A13th, right? You want to be able to just play that without a second thought, you know, because everything is going to be built on those. So for the beginner, intermediate, it's just all chordal work, learning chords. Don't worry about licks, lines, and runs too much yet. Because once those come, it's going to be built on the idea of being able to play chords. So if you struggle to play chord, adding licks and runs to that is going to further complicate things and confuse you. So I'm not sure exactly what level you're at, but if you feel comfortable already with your chords and your keys and your extensions, then it just sounds like you need to learn licks, lines, and runs and copy them from other players. I've spent decades just learning how to improvise and how other people improvise, because it's a language. And I like to equate it to a baby learning how to speak. You have to listen to people around you as a baby. So you learn how to use words and then learn how to use them in cohesive sentences. That's not something you're just born knowing how to do. You learn it, and you learn it through listening and through communicating with people. Right? So to learn how to properly improvise and phrase in a way that it makes sense, you have to look to people that you admire and copy what they do. Just like a baby copy people when they speak, they don't even know what they're saying, but you're just mimicking and copying until they learn context. They learn what words mean. So for now, you just want to copy. And then eventually you're going to be like, oh, now I understand what this does and how to weave it into this and how to move it into that key. You start to learn, then understand why someone do a certain run. But first, you don't necessarily need to know the why. You just need to know, can I copy it? And does it sound good?